So the Servicemen's Readjustment Act, better known as the GI Bill, was first passed in 1944 under President Franklin D. Roosevelt, and it promised soldiers returning from World War II benefits in the aspects of educational assistance, home loan guarantees, and unemployment insurance. President Roosevelt at the time felt the need to support veterans by preventing economic turmoil and expanding the middle class. Because after World War I, when veterans came back, they could not make ends meet, even with help from the government. And one of the other major goals of the GI Bill was to avoid another depression. So by the end of World War II, there were over 15 million veterans who would be eligible for these benefits. And it's estimated that for every dollar spent under the GI Bill, the economy got $7 back. So in 1956, the Service Members Readjustment Act did expire, but the term GI Bill refers to legislation that has happened since then. In 1956, 7.8 out of 16 million World War II veterans were still able to participate in programs under the GI Bill. And this bill gave up to $500 for those who wish to continue their education in college or a vocational school, while also receiving a living stipend. As a result, in 1947, almost 49% of college admissions were veterans. The Readjustment Benefits Act of 1966 expanded benefits to all members of the armed forces, including those who had served during peacetime operations, which really helped soldiers that had not participated in World War II but were still members of the military. And the benefits offered under this program included home loans, job counseling, employment services, tuition assistance for honorably serving veterans. And veterans hospitals were also given $500 million, and the Veterans Administration was upgraded to a war essential agency, which it hadn't been prior to that. The idea was that those who served would gain educational and employment opportunities after serving their country. And some of the expansions, which we're going to talk about in a minute, of this act include the Montgomery GI Bill and the post 9/11 bill. So the Montgomery GI Bill was proposed in 1984 by G.V. Sonny Montgomery, who is a representative of the state of Mississippi, and he wanted to ensure that veterans of the Vietnam War could receive and would receive higher education benefits. It also provided benefits for the first time for members of the Selective Reserve. And while this iteration of the GI Bill is smaller, it's still active today. Participants have to opt in whenever they sign their contracts, and they have to have at least 2 years of active duty service. So on August 1st, 2009, the post 9/11 Veterans Educational Assistance Act of 2008, better known as the post 9/11 GI Bill, was enacted. And this was in response to findings that service on active duty in the armed forces had been especially difficult for members of the armed forces since September 11th, 2001. And there was a need for an educational assistance program that provided enhanced educational benefits for soldiers that are worthy of such service. The post 9/11 GI Bill gave service members and veterans with 90 or more active duty days after September 11th enhanced educational benefits to cover more expenses, provide a living allowance. It gave money for books and the ability to transfer their benefits to spouses or children. So in 2017, President Donald Trump signed the Harry W. Comrie Veterans Educational Assistance Act, better known as the Forever GI Bill. And what this act did is it increased benefits and it removed the time frame in which the veteran or service members had to use their benefits, which previously was 15 years. And it also gave more access to GI Bill. It gave more access to the GI Bill to reservists called to active duty under certain circumstances, and it allowed Purple Heart recipients to receive GI Bill benefits no matter how long they had served on active duty. So now I'm going to throw some numbers out at you. After the end of World War II, there were over 15 million veterans who would be eligible for GI Bill benefits, and by 1956, almost 10 million veterans had received GI Bill benefits. From 1944 to 1949, $4 billion was given out in unemployment benefits to over 9 million veterans. The post 9/11 GI Bill, when that was first enacted, more than 290,000 veterans had received it in the first year alone. Um, and the GI Bill overall, through its history, has increased the country's intellectual capital. So, for instance, the bill has funded the educations of 22,000 dentists, 67,000 doctors, 91,000 scientists, 258,000 teachers, 240,000 accountants, 450,000 engineers. We have three Supreme Court justices who have used the GI Bill, three presidents, a dozen senators, 14 Nobel Prize winners, and 24 Pulitzer Prize winners. So while the GI Bill has persisted in some form or another since World War II, the real value of the benefits have been declining just as home prices are rising, car prices are rising, taxes are becoming more and more, food prices are rising. The cost of higher education has also risen. And by 2007, the GI Bill couldn't even cover the cost of education at many schools. So there have been many policy changes and improvements of the GI Bill since it's been implemented. There's one recent change that may continue to affect benefits for veterans. In 2011, Congress applied a uniform maximum tuition rate for both private and not-for-profit institutions. So, such as the difference between a private university, Columbia University, Harvard University, or your local in-state school. And so public universities are still remained fully funded despite whether or not the tuition exceeded the national average. And this tuition rate change was in part because of the discrepancies in the tuition rates between the two types of universities. And they really focus more on the high cost programs such as flight training, nursing, pharmacy, and engineering programs. So after World War II, benefits were administered by an all-white Veterans Administration, both at the state and local level. Segregation made access to homeownership and educational opportunities extremely limited for African Americans, especially in the southern states. Local banks would often refuse to lend money to African Americans in neighborhoods, um, prohibited them from moving in. While there's no distinction in GI Bill benefits between African Americans and whites, the path to owning a home and receiving a college education were very different in that time period. There's also a lot of challenges post 9/11. After leaving the service, particularly after 9/11 and Operation Enduring Freedom, veterans experienced financial challenges. They had predatory lending, mismanagement in finances, lack of having an emergency savings plan. Some of these came from soldiers and veterans coming from disadvantaged backgrounds, mental health problems such as PTSD, and service connected disabilities. These challenges are more pronounced in first generation college students due to the fact that they enter the military right after high school and they're more likely to come from underprivileged backgrounds. And African Americans who also face equity challenges in healthcare access, discrimination in employment. Um, Veterans from the enlisted ranks are more prone to challenges as well. Enlisted soldiers have historically lower academic performance in high school compared to the officer ranks. It also found that white female veterans pursue higher education at a higher rate than their male counterparts. They experience challenges in the underutilization of VA and non governmental support programs, and they have greater exposure to trauma and mental health problems.